Ram Dass lives today in quiet security, watching his son serve as a respected officer. But decades ago, his family was unrecognizable, haggard, hungry, and exhausted. Looking back at their history, Mohan asked his father a question many still wonder. What was the specific turning point that finally broke their cycle of misfortune? At that time, Ram Dass was trapped in a deficit. He spent 14 hours a day in the fields, yet the yield never covered the basic cost of survival. His wife Sita frequently skipped meals to ensure their son had enough to eat, a sacrifice that only barely kept the family afloat. For years, they waited for a rescue, a sudden gift from the government, or a stroke of financial lightning that would solve their problems in a single day. This illustrates a common economic trap. When the cost of living exceeds the maximum output of physical labor, effort alone cannot fix the equation. Breaking that cycle requires a change in the inputs of the person doing the work. The change began when a wandering sage observed Ram Dass's despair. He pointed out that Ram Dass was focusing entirely on his empty pockets rather than the habits that dictate a person's long-term trajectory. Instead of chasing external wealth, the sage instructed Ram Dass to prioritize 3 internal pillars: discipline, integrity, and devotion. Merging these built a foundation of character. He stopped worrying about uncontrollable variables, focusing entirely on his honesty, routine, and resilience. He traded his morning sleep for meditation and began his work with a new, rigid schedule. He committed to a standard of truth that meant never shortchanging a customer, even when the extra money would have bought him a better meal. He replaced his focus on seeking rescue with a focus on maintaining a consistent, honest presence. He was no longer waiting for his life to change. He was changing the way he interacted with his life. The durability of this new approach was tested when Mohan fell dangerously ill. With no savings for medicine, the family had a wall that character alone seemingly couldn't climb. Ram Dass went to the temple, but his prayer reflected his new internal standard. He didn't ask for a bag of gold to pay a doctor. He asked for the strength to endure the crisis and for the safety of his son. During an exhausted sleep at the temple, Ram Dass saw a vision of Lord Hanuman. The presence offered a silent assurance that those who commit to truth and service create a bond with the divine that does not leave them isolated in their darkest hours. What followed was a series of fortunate events. Mohan's fever broke unexpectedly, and weeks later, a localized storm that devastated nearby farms left Ram Dass's crops largely untouched. While the weather was luck, the following prosperity was an economic certainty. This graph shows how trust compounds. Because Ram Dass built a reputation for selling pure milk, the community shifted their business to him, leading to the financial stability that funded Mohan's education. The recovery of his son and the survival of his crops provided the window of opportunity. But it was the years of integrity that allowed Ram Dass to step through that window and build a future that lasted. Back in the present, Ram Dass looked at the successful officer his son had become and finally answered his question about when their luck changed. He told Mohan that their fortune shifted the moment he stopped asking for a change in his circumstances and began asking for a change in his own conduct. He realized that devotion provides the internal equipment for success, the composure to handle a crisis, the stamina to work through exhaustion, and the clarity to choose honesty when a shortcut seems easier. This matrix clarifies the mechanic. Passive hope leads to stagnation because it relies on external factors. Active devotion acts as a multiplier. It takes a person's daily labor and amplifies its value through consistency and the high trust of others. Devotion functions as a discipline of the will. It creates a person who is reliable, kind, and focused, precisely the qualities required to maintain a business and a family over the long term. Prosperity is rarely a single sudden event. It is the result of building a character that is strong enough to recognize a moment of grace and disciplined enough to turn that grace into a legacy.